Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone? All right, so I'm going to start this talk by giving you a quick assignment, okay? Here it is. The next time someone tells you that the secret to success is to simply follow your passion, respond and tell them, thanks for nothing. Now, many of you laughed because we've all heard the phrase before, follow your passion. It's the most generic, common point of advice that we hear all the time, and quite elusive. Because think about it. The definition of the word passion itself is a powerful state of emotion or feeling, which we know changes all the time. And when you see that, it's, how can I follow something that I can't even grasp? But quite frankly, what we end up doing is because we believe that others have figured it out, we constantly scour their bios. We look to mentors to emulate their success, and we spend time and money relocating for resources to be able to emulate the success of all these different people that don't even reflect our own stories. And that, for some people, is very problematic. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 5 people live in a state of anxiety and depression, which is highlighted in many news stories of tragic acts of suicide, which reinforces this reality, because we're unhappy leading the lives of others and not following our own stories. So the question becomes, if following our passion isn't a concrete method to following success, then what is? Well, I think you should be following something else. I think you should be following your patterns. And here's why. By definition, a pattern is a reliable sample of repeated tendencies and acts that you can see in a person. And I believe that many of you, for who you are and who you are destined to be, is already showcased in the repeated small moves that you have done since the day you were born. And following the stories of others may inspire you, it will, but it won't really guide you. And that's the truth. And so in 3 minutes, I've already told you that yes, following your passions is not something that you should follow, that you should follow your patterns. And there may be skeptics in the room that may say, well, okay, thanks for nothing. But I'm here to show you how you can follow your patterns with something I call the 8 Challenge, which is a 3-step tool that I've utilized to decode my story. And it's simply this. First, to audit your life experiences with powerful reflective questions. Second is to test your triggers and explore new experiences. And finally, to execute and transition into a lifestyle that you truly want. And to visualize how to use this tool to actually decode your story. I'm going to showcase the journey I took to decode my own. So here goes. I'll start with the audit. Now, in thinking about the audit, I started with my academic experiences. And as you could tell, there's a lot of consistencies here that you could find. Now, even though I promised my parents that I would pursue a life in banking or law, throughout middle school, high school, and college, I realized that I had a knack for culture, history, and language. Now, it's okay, to appease my family, I still took the business programs. But these patterns did emerge in other experiences outside of class. And what I did outside, in terms of taking pictures from National Geographic and coded them into a scrapbook, traveling to over 30 countries to track the stories of street vendors around the world, or even just journaling and making poetry about things that I found along the way. And one thing that I did that I know many of you in this room probably have done as well is that I ignored the patterns that were emerging right before my eyes. And you know why. It's because I could not figure out how to monetize that pattern, so I settled and pursued a career in banking. Now, the thing about patterns is, remember, they repeat themselves and they come and surface again. And so even though I tried to ignore it, it repeated itself again during my career in banking. And eventually, I started to drum up a level of anxiety ignoring these patterns and stifling myself. So at one point, I came to a crossroads where I could either follow this typical ladder in corporate banking or take a leap of faith and jump off a cliff and enter the startup world. It was my choice. And you know, many of you limit yourselves in taking these chances for many different reasons, whether it's for lack of bravery, lack of resources, or other limitations. I realized that the fear of fulfilling an unfulfilled lifestyle was greater than my fears and excuses, quite frankly. So I took a leap of faith, and I actually just moved to a place I've never been before. And I'm standing right here, and I'm excited to be back here in Dubai, even though I just flew from San Francisco to get here. I came to Dubai. And in that year, I did the test that I told you about from before. I tried so many different things that I was amazed at what came out of me. I went to over 200 different events, shadowed amazing entrepreneurs, and even launched 3 startup projects. Some of them succeeded, some of them failed. But it didn't even matter because I set no limitations or expectations on this experience. My goal was simply to see, did the patterns I noticed in my life audit reflect and resurface in the actions and choices I took during this year? And they did. And I started to realize that all this time, I was realizing that I was actually running away from something that was telling me a lot more about myself and where I needed to be. And as a result, I decided to toss a new chapter and actually execute. And what I mean by execute is actually taking what I learned from following my patterns and going into a lifestyle I truly wanted to be, which is a social entrepreneur. Now, granted, many of you might know a social entrepreneur as someone who tackles social problems with business. But for me, I was also trying to approach people that mattered to me the most, people that was also reflective of my upbringing. Because the most glaring pattern of all in my life that I was ignoring all this time was the fact that I am connected to these people in one particular way. I was also a street vendor. I grew up in Haiti, and like my grandmother and my mother before me, I grew up in the streets, street vending, and this was my world. This high, vibrant activity that you see here where multiple languages are being spoken, multiple transactions happen, this was my space. And granted, I was trying to go in every different vertical to say that I have made it as a banker, as a lawyer. This is where I came alive. And that's what every time I travel, every article I read led me back here. And in that moment and realizing that, I said, wow, if this is my pace of operation, I also realized that this is also the home of the second largest economy. And a lot of people don't know this, how much activity actually happens in the street market. And because I was operating in my space of strength and happiness, I made a bold intention and said, this is my calling. I'm going to be the first person to bring the offline street market online. And that's a bold move, because for many people, it doesn't make sense. How can you digitize a $10 trillion economy by yourself? Well, I wouldn't do it alone, of course. But the thing is, when you start to follow your patterns, you start to trust your gut a lot more and let it take you to wherever you need to go. And so I started small. My idea became a handwritten sketch that eventually became a blog, eventually a media network, and then a call to action to different people around the world, some of which resembled me, travelers. I was calling out to different travelers to share with the world the discoveries of the greatest products that they could find around the world, and of course, the coolest and tastiest street food that they could find, and share it with the world on the first mobile network, connecting global travelers to street vendors in real time. And they actually answered the calling. In the first 24 hours of our campaign, we received over 300 different photos from over 40 different countries. And that's when I realized that my original sketch and my calling, that was started off so small, actually became a global movement. And I realized that I got to this point only because I actually took the time to actually try to decode my story and take it wherever it led me. And quite frankly, this is not new. We already know that one legend of our time already gave us the secret and we weren't even realizing it. Steve Jobs, who, as you know, said that the best thing you could do is to connect the dots not by looking forward, but by looking backwards. And so I'll end with this. Originally, I told you not to follow your passions, because I do not believe that's the secret to success. So I hope you pass it on and let people to not simply follow their passions, but unconditionally follow their patterns. I wish you all the best. Thank you.